テレビ界のアカデミー賞とも呼ばれるエミー賞を通算29回も手にしてきたアメリカ屈指のスポーツキャスターボブ・コスタス氏が米トーク番組ザ・ジム・ローム・ショーに出演。番組の中でコスタス氏は大谷選手やドジャースが野球界に与える影響力を語るとともに、今シーズン終了後に確実に起きると言われるロックアウトについて言及。さらに大谷選手が史上最高の選手なのかというテーマについて、その理由を最も分かりやすく言語化しています。見どころたっぷりの内容を日本語字幕付きでご紹介しますので、ぜひ最後までご覧ください。
So Bobby mentioned the Dodgers, the Cardinals, and what might ever happen should that happen. Turning to baseball, you grew up in New York in an era that coincided with the tail end of the dynastic run by the Yankees and their multiple series wins. So where do you come out on the current dominance of the sport by the Dodgers? Is that a positive or a negative for the sport?
You know, I actually think it's a positive because, and people misunderstood this, people always think if you say something about positive about, especially a big market team, that you're dissing their team. It was better for baseball that Shohei Ohtani landed with the Dodgers, not just because they're building a huge Asian fan base and his presence draws a disproportionate number of excellent Japanese players who want to play not just with the Dodgers, they want to play with him, and now with Yamamoto and others. But it was better for the game that the most fascinating, Aaron Judge is a great player, a generational player, an elite someday inner circle Hall of Famer, and people love to watch him. But Ohtani is in a different class, and it was better that he was with the Dodgers than with the Angels. Nothing against the Angels. They've really tried. I mean, you live in Orange County. People love to diss Artie Moreno. He signed Albert Pujols. He signed Josh Hamilton. He re-signed Trout. He signed Anthony Rendon, who all of a sudden decided he didn't want to play baseball. And they tried to hang on to Ohtani. And they came up snake eyes on almost all of that. But you can't, I don't think people are correct when they say he's not trying. But nonetheless, it would have been better, is better, that Ohtani wound up with the Dodgers because he got to the biggest showcase twice in a row. And you know the Dodgers are always going to be in the playoff mix. But to your question about them dominating, Milwaukee won 97 games last year. They beat the Dodgers 6-0, 6 times out of 6 in the regular season, then got swept in the LCS. And obviously, when the Dodgers pull it all together and get the pitching lined up, they're a better team than the team that settled for 93 wins and won the National League West. The Dodgers are always going to be in the mix. But this setup now, we have 2 central divisions. That's 10 teams in the 2 central divisions, Romy. None of those teams, with the exception of the Cubs, is in the top half of baseball payrolls. So that gives teams like the Guardians and the Royals and the Twins, that gives them a chance in those divisions. And there's really no excuse for a team like the Pirates to consistently be bad because, with the exception of the Cubs, no one's going to greatly outspend them in the National League Central. So you have that. And now you have 3 wild cards. So you can get into the playoffs winning 85, 86, 87 games. And once you're in, you've got a crack at it. And think how close the Blue Jays came. Now, they're not a small market team, but how close they came to beating the Dodgers. They did everything but win that World Series. But how close Seattle came to being in the series against the Dodgers instead of Toronto. So are there some teams that are hopelessly languishing, and may that lead to a lockout? We hope not. And if there is a lockout, they'll impose it in December. And so the idea of that is to put pressure on and enough of it that you can settle before you lose any games. And historically, games have only been lost after strikes, not after lockouts. But if there is a lockout, it's because some percentage of the 30 teams feel that this is out of whack. But the Players Association will never go for a salary cap, even though every other major American team sports, North American team sport, has some version of a salary cap. But in baseball, that's a line that the Players Association will never allow you to cross. It's like a holy war rather than just a straight up business negotiation. But they're going to have to find some mechanism that restores a little bit of order to this. But I think when people complain that the Dodgers can punch their ticket on opening day to the World Series in October, that's not really true. Think about the seasons before the last 2 when the Dodgers won the World Series. They lost to the Padres in 4 games from their own division after finishing 22 games ahead of them. Then they got swept by the Diamondbacks 3 straight the next year from their own division. They'd been 16 games ahead of them. And then in 2024, when they wound up winning the World Series, they were down again to the Padres 2-1 in a best-of-5. So once you get into that postseason, you could be the 1927 Yankees. It's a roll of the dice.
Hey, by the way, that you could drop your proverbial microphone right there, because that's extremely well said. And it's the biggest misnomer ever. Like, I've never understood all this outrage against the Dodgers. To your point, Bob, you just laid it all out. I mean, there is no guarantee. All these other teams had such a good look at it. Toronto came this close to getting it done last year. So I don't buy any of that at all, and it's got nothing to do with where I am geographically. But you mentioned the Union. I'm really concerned. I'm really interested in this. Like, you and I are old enough. We remember 1994. We remember the strike that led to the cancellation of the World Series. What about that union? You know, you go back to the days when Donald Fehr ruled that union and Marvin Miller before that. Is that union what it was then? Like, do you feel like they've got a willingness to fight as hard as their predecessors to prevent the owners from imposing a salary cap? Because you know more than ever they are coming for blood this time.
Yeah, and now Tony Clark ran into some difficulties of his own, and he's out. And so that may cause some confusion and may put a crack in a unified front. Nobody who has headed the Players Association ever wanted to be the first one to yield on a salary cap, because it was a principle in their minds that could never be violated. And Marvin Miller pretty much held the players together, and his successors, Don Fehr and Gene Orza, who all of whom were brilliant and honest. Even if you disagree with them, they didn't lie. They weren't disingenuous. They were honest. So you didn't catch them in lies, but they were hardcore. They wouldn't yield anything. And because Marvin Miller had told them that the owners will never be straight with you and they're always trying to screw you, and that kind of went through the membership. So even the highest salary players were willing to miss paychecks to protect everyone, the entire membership, and succeeding generations of players. The players historically have all read from that hymnal. They're all singing from the same hymnal that first was laid down by Marvin Miller. Now we'll see whoever winds up, carrying the torch for them in this upcoming negotiation, if that person has any different outlook.
Bob, you mentioned Shohei, so you have always had a profound appreciation for baseball history. I mean, have we reached a point right now? Can we say that Shohei is the greatest player of all time, given his unique skill set, his two-way player status? I mean, is he the best player you've ever seen?
Yeah, that's the case to make for him, because there's nobody like him. Babe Ruth, in a completely different era, was a Hall of Fame level pitcher when he was primarily pitching. And then he became the greatest slugger of his era. But he didn't do both of them simultaneously, and he didn't do both of them against a better talent pool integrated with not just black players, but Hispanic players and players now from Asia. So there's never been anybody like Ohtani, and you can make that case. If you want to make the case that there are contemporaries, including, let's say, Aaron Judge, who have been more productive offensively, and if you want to, allow for differences in generations, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, etc., may have been more productive hitters than Ohtani, but they didn't steal bases like Ohtani did. The one year that Ohtani didn't pitch, that's when he decided to steal 50 and inaugurate the 50-50 club, of which he is not only the only member, but likely to always be the only member. So, when you talk about somebody being unique, unique is a misused word. A lot of times people say it's very unique. Something can't be very unique. It's either unique or it isn't.
It's redundant, right?
Right. And unique is not something that's rare. It's unique. It applies to Ohtani. He is unique. Now, is he as productive a hitter as the post-PEDs Barry Bonds? And Barry Bonds was a great player even before that. Base stealer, Gold Glove outfielder, great player. He doesn't play the field, speaking of Ohtani, did in Japan some, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was a first-rate outfielder if they ever let him do it. But is he as great in that respect as Willie Mays or Ken Griffey Jr. or Roberto Clemente? No. So are there some areas where you could say this guy was better? But there's never been anybody who combined the two most important things, pitching and hitting for power and speed. He's the guy.
So, Bob, alliteration aside, is he unique or is he a unicorn?
He's both. He's both. A unicorn in theory, in mythology, Never saw it before. What's that? I never saw that before. It's a unit. I'm never going to see it again.
We've never seen 50-50 before, and we'll never see it again
No,
unless he decides to go 60-60.
He's both, and some of the things, the games that he had in the postseason, game 3, I guess, the 18-inning game that Freeman won with a home run. He had 2 doubles, 2 homers, and then they walked him 5 straight times. So he's on base all 9 times. And then earlier in the playoffs, I guess against the Brewers, I'm losing track, but he pitched six
No, you
six
don't.
shutout
Bob,
innings.
you never lose track of anything.
Well, that's not really true anymore. It used to be true. Now and then I had a little roadblock of some kind, stumbling block. But the game where he struck out 12 and allowed 1 or 2 hits, pitched shutout ball, and then also hit 2 home runs or 3 home runs. Might have been 3 in that game. And one of them was over the pavilion, and into the walkway in right center field at Dodger Stadium. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring.
So, but before you go, it's so great. I appreciate you so much. You mentioned Letterman.
最後までご覧いただきありがとうございました。今回の動画についてどういう感想を持たれましたか？ぜひコメント欄で意見や感想をお聞かせください。チャンネル登録やグッドボタンを押していただけると励みになります。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。